Salut, c'est Clément de Mouvement Conscient et dans cette vidéo, je vous propose une discussion profonde où on va premièrement parler de ce que ça veut dire d'avoir un corps qui est véritablement fort, vivant et intelligent. Deuxièmement, on va parler de comment vous devez programmer vos entraînements. Et troisièmement, on va parler de ce que ça veut dire de réellement avoir une pratique de vie, entre guillemets, et de réellement bosser sur son art. C'est une vidéo qui est quand même assez exceptionnelle dans la mesure où je vais vous proposer une interview de Marcello Palozzo, qui est un professeur de mouvement, qui base son enseignement sur l'utilisation de l'environnement, comme on pourrait le voir par exemple en parcours. Ça fait plusieurs années qu'il travaille aux côtés d'Ido Portal, et à mon sens c'est vraiment le mélange parfait entre guillemets entre geek et sportif. C'est-à-dire que non seulement il fait énormément de recherches, mais c'est aussi un pratiquant discipliné de mouvement, ce qui fait de lui vraiment un coach qui est très réputé dans le domaine du mouvement et de la préparation physique. Là ça fait 6 mois que je bosse avec lui, je suis pas prêt à l'arrêter, j'ai vraiment appris beaucoup de choses avec lui, et c'est la raison pour laquelle je vous propose une discussion de 2 heures que j'ai entièrement traduite en français. Donc ça a pris vraiment énormément de temps. Donc je vous invite dès à présent à activer tous les sous-titres sur YouTube. Et si vous avez aimé la vidéo, n'hésitez pas à lui envoyer un message sur Instagram et à visiter son site qui est dans la description. C'est parti.
So we'll begin with the first questions, which is that what are your views about strength and what does having a strong body mean to you? Because you said you have certain thoughts about strength itself. You also said that you rarely train it in a traditional way. Mm-hmm. And I've also heard you talk about the fact that strength should be something with like minimal commitment in the way, more minimalistic. So I just wanted to hear you talk more about that.
All right, yes, we can start on this. So basically, I want to start from a certain definition by subtraction, which is something that I like to do. When I think about strength, I don't think about something that is just capacity based, right? And this is one of the big misconceptions that are out there right now. So for example, when people think about strength, they think, okay, so what is your 1 RM of squat? Or, you know, how many pull-ups can you do? Or how many pistols can you do, and so forth. But this misses a large point, which is basically we are a complex system. And strength cannot be defined just by quantity alone, because you have met for sure like a lot of really strong people that like in what they mean as general terms, that they cannot really apply that strength anywhere else. So I don't view strength as something that can be can be closed down between 4 walls, right? In terms of just capacity means really nothing. It feels like, yes, someone is really strong, but it's always strong in relation to what, right? And this is where people are missing the point. It's like strength in relation to what? What do you need this strength for, right? Because otherwise we start to go into a certain spiraling that doesn't bring you anywhere, right? So for me, strength is something that it's a quality. It's a quality that can be applied, but it's the same quality as many other qualities. Like for example, being fast, and you know, being silent, having control or of something, or you know, etc., etc. All these qualities, right? So when I'm thinking about strength, I think, okay, I want to be strong in climbing. Okay, so what do I need in order to do that? Maybe I need strong fingers, right? So and then maybe I need a certain range to strength to rise the leg, to reach a certain hold, and so forth and so forth. So I view strength in this manner. Strength is a multi-dimensional concept, and it should be explored as such. So I wouldn't stop myself into the capacity alone, but I would look at it through different means. Okay, so to clarify a little bit further, I consider strength as a mixture between capacity and skills. Right, so for example, again, as I said, you want to be strong in a certain context, then you can be, but it should be within that concept, that area. And this is the only way you can really approach such concepts. Okay, so this is just a very general approach that I have on the theme. Now, if I need to train a certain concept, then I try to approach it from all the different angles. Like you asked me, what does it mean to have a strong body? Well, I would say you have a strong body if you can apply this concept among and through a lot of different topics. Like, for example, you're strong in lifting, you're strong in carrying, you're strong in throwing, you're strong in, for example, dealing with fears, you're strong in dealing with certain emotions, you're strong in frustration, in dealing with frustration and so forth. For me, strength, again, as a concept, is something much larger, and it should be approached as such. I did my MSc in strength and conditioning, and the approach that they always had is, you know, in order to get stronger, do I don't know, Olympic weightlifting or lift some higher weights. But eventually, it's not really, it's really missing the mark, because if you need strength for something else, then you don't have the tools. So, you know, you get the.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So and the way I usually approach this is basically going into a certain field and diving deep into that field. Like, for example, you know, you want to get stronger in climbing, we were saying, right? So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to check all the requirements for climbing and see where strength is a weak link, and then address that, like specifically. As I said, for example, lifting the leg, for example, the posterior chain, while the leg is completely extended, is usually not that strong. So the capacity to push down now on something, on a hold, once you have heel hooked something, or you know, you are grabbing something with the pinky, and you need to use it. You know, like, this is where a traditional strength training would come in the sense of, okay, you need to have a goal, and you increase a certain quantity in order to then get an outcome, and so forth, right? So, and in order to do this, really, you don't need anything. I like to have a very minimalist approach into this, because you need to know what you're after, and then you basically create the setting for it to happen, for you to improve. Like, for example, I want to get better in lifting something, then the best setting is probably going into a gym and lifting something heavy, you know, but right, in that specific context. But then it's like, why would you need something like this? Not everybody needs. I met a lot of, for example, a lot of acrobats that are extremely strong people, but they didn't lift a weight in their lives, right? So so really strong in their context, but also outside. So when people approach strength from this very general approach, like bench pressing, and, you know, like doing weighted chins, and then, you know, doing weighted like I don't know, deadlifts and squats and this, I always ask myself, okay, but what do you really need this for? If you, of course there is a space for this, and a lot of people need it also, but you need to know what you're after. Otherwise you're just operating in a like a machine now automatically, because training strength, it means that. But to me, every time I want to look at what are the requirements and then unfold from there.
I see. Yeah. I think regarding what you said, there are a couple nuances that really struck me. That on one hand, strength seems to be, I mean, not really strength, but having a strong body. It's something that's really linked to having a generalist practice, like you said, being able to apply that strength in many different areas. But somehow it also seems like really specific, because there are like so many areas in which you could apply strength, that having a strong body is almost seems like something you can never really achieve. It really seems just like a process, and just that, because there's so many things you could work on, and which is very interesting, but it could also be like very frustrating, because now you think to yourself, okay, there's like so many things I could do, so what should I do? And I think what people like about like a traditional strength practice, yeah, it's that it's very measurable. Like you said, like how much do you bench, or can you do a one-arm chin? It's very comforting. So how do you deal with all that insecurity, all those different options to actually practice?
Yeah, so this goes more back into another topic, which is setting directions. Really, what people don't know is what they are after. And this is one of the first things that should be addressed in the first place. It's like, if you wish to train strength, but you don't know in which direction to go, well, maybe you should reconsider training strength altogether, or you know, in general, trying to understand what do you want out of a certain practice or out of a certain training, or etc. No, right? For example, if someone would come in just because he wants to feel better, okay, and wants to work on his health, general health, so there are a lot of things that he can do, and maybe general, you know, just improving on any possible physical skill or capacity would drive him towards that direction. So in that sense, direction doesn't matter. Like, you just want to improve on something, but in order to get a better health, because of course we know, like, you improve your VO2 max, or you improve your squat max or something, then the body starts to go into a positive adaptation of certain sort, and then you feel better, right? So you are going towards wellness. But then another problem arises, because you are going in and you realize, okay, so maybe from this there isn't that much of a meaning, right? I want something else, and that's where, you know, I don't want to limit myself into just, you know, just improving a certain parameter, and then they lose sight of what is the direction, because they really can't focus their eyes on where do we want to go, and hence they would just start to create some confusion inside of them. It's like, okay, instead of taking a step back and trying to realize again, okay, what am I after? What do I want? Then they would just try to think, okay, I want to train a new element in strength, or where do I go within this field, and blah, blah, blah. But maybe they should be after something completely different. Now, this is just a possibility, but this is something that I saw many times. Yeah. In terms of setting direction within strength, is if one is really after strength, if this is something that really interests them, then I would say one needs to set a certain, like, some standards for himself or herself, and these standards can be very personal, again, depending on the type of path that the person wants to go into. Like, for example, as I said, if you want to approach strength as a general concept, then go through it all over the line. So if you want to have strong arms that can lift, can carry, can hang, can brachiate, and can lift things, etc., etc. And the same with the legs. You want a lot of optionality. You want them to serve you in any kind of a situation. So you want them to be strong in any possible range, for example, and you want, etc., etc. And then you would go into the torso, and you want the same thing as for the rest of the parts of your body, and then you want to apply this instead of just within one single area. You want this in many different areas. So you want to be strong while you are, I don't know, training with weights, when you're going for I don't know, for a parkour course, when you're going swimming, when you're going climbing, when you're going fighting in BJJ, for example. Yeah, I'm just making some examples. And then as you explore this this idea in so many different ways, then you can reach the conclusion that, okay, I am getting stronger, I'm getting closer to where I want to go. But again, as I said, first set directions, then try to see if strength is something that you really want, and then move onwards.
I understand, yeah. It seems to me that, I mean, the way you talk about it is that strength is something that's really personal and really subjective in a way. I mean, there's obviously like many ways to measure strength in specific settings, but the way you talk about it is like really personal, and what's your way of doing it. And I think it's very interesting. And I also hear another voice in my head saying, oh, but there's still, let's say that if you do like a handstand push-up, you'll have like a decent bench press as well without training it. But even if you have like a good bench press, you won't be able to do a handstand push-up. Or even if you do a handstand push-ups, you will be able to like let's say push someone off in BJJ, but it's not because you can push someone off in BJJ that you'll be able to do like handstand push-ups per se. So to me, it also seems that there are like certain exercises that are like in a way like a bang for your buck exercise that will have like a carryover in a more generalistic strength practice. So what do you think also about that?
So now we are talking optimization, which is a different theme, but yeah, also very valuable for those who wish to pursue a certain path. Because of course, like there is another thing we didn't mention is that we have limited. Oh wow, can't say this. Limited resources.
Yeah,
we have limited resources, especially in terms of time, right? So we want to optimize, and this makes total sense also in my view. Once you know what you're after, then you can steer a little bit the boat in the direction in which you want to go. First of all, you are talking about transfer, but I think there is a higher level than transfer, which is doing exactly the skill that you're after, which is also something nobody really talks about. Because, for example, you want to get stronger in BJJ, then you can, for example, in terms of pulling someone towards you. So pull someone towards you 1,000,000 times, you're gonna get that specific type of strength in the best possible way. There is no better way. Now you just need to find a way to make that progressive, and this is usually really hard because of the complexity of the skill. Okay, so this is one of the first and fundamental layers that nobody touches upon, and that I found it really annoying because it comes from a lack of clarity, I believe. Also, when I went into my uni, because we talked immediately about on transfer, but then we didn't really talk about the development of strength inside the actual thing that you need. It's like, for example, I remember this study. I might link it if I find it again. They compared these guys that like a group of people just trained grip strength, like in terms of amount of time, and then another pool of people trained climbing, right? And the guys that trained climbing, they got a higher level of grip strength, you know, and also they got better in climbing. And some, of course, they got like more or less the same improvements, but in general, it was like the best was just climbing, right? Of course, I maybe isolating certain bits and pieces on climbing, but that was the best. So consider, for example, you want to improve, I don't know, your AU to QDR, okay, in terms of acrobatics. Then instead of doing handstand push-ups, do 1,000,000 AU to QDR, do them concentric and eccentric, and that is going to be the best for you, right? And that's what I saw in many, you know, like the breaking communities, in many groups of capoeira, things that where I went into, or even parkour groups. People are doing some crazy drops nowadays, just in order to strengthen the legs. Some guys can drop from 5 meters. Can you get there from doing squats? Maybe, but also maybe not. And then you will always transfer something. It won't be immediate. Okay, so this is one layer. The second layer is in terms of transfer. So if you can't isolate the skill good enough and make it progressive, so you're gonna have to do something accessory, okay? But remember that it's an accessory work. Like, for example, we said, in BJJ, you cannot really pull a partner 1,000,000 times because you don't have access to a partner or to ever-growing partners in strength. So what do I do? How do I approach pulling it in that moment? Then the best answer is in the dynamic correspondence principles and criterion from Verkhoshansky and Sif, which basically are some criterion that they've set, some criteria, where they take into consideration max power output, max strength output, and the rate of force development, and blah blah blah, and within every like complexity of the skill, etc. And if you pick the skill between the two, right, between the skill that you want and the skill that is the accessory, right, in terms of capacity, the one between the two that has the highest level of these other qualities I talked about, okay, will transfer onto the other. All right. So, for example, you would take a long jump and a jerk, right? So which one will transfer into the two? So you would have to go into an analysis of the two movements. For example, you would see that on the last step of a high jump, maybe on an elite level, you can go high up over something like 6 times your body weight, right? In terms of instantaneous weight that you need to carry on yourself. So this will transfer back on the jerk, for example. But on the other hand, maybe maximal power production will be exerted in the first one, in the jerk. So that will transfer back. And it's similar. Like now, for example, what happens in a handstand push-up, right? It's much more complex. So it will most likely transfer back into an overhead press, right? So, yes, so when you are looking into what are the needs of the person you're working with, or in general, what are my needs or your needs, or etc., or for any practitioner can do this for himself, try to see which one is the exercise in which I can exert the most force, the most power, the most exert the force the fastest, which one is more complex, and I would pick that, right? So, for example, yeah, as we said, no, the handstand push-up is good, is probably better than training an overhead press, unless you're a strongman and you want to just overhead press the shit out of the world, right? So yeah, but for someone that wants to train optimizing his resources, then I would go there. For example, doing something like climb ups on a wall or muscle ups on a bar would be much better to develop the capacity to pull something fast, much more than doing, for example, a lat machine done quickly, etc. So yes, out of these principles you would construct a plan.
I see.
Right, but you know, it's hard for me to make it simpler than this, because you cannot just pick elements, like random elements, and just put them together. You need to know more or less where a person wants to go. If it's really general, then yes, that person should probably go towards a certain complexity, because we are complex systems and we are capable of doing something incredible if we wish to, and exploiting these potentials is a good direction for me to go into. Otherwise, it would be a bit like going in another direction than the one that evolution pushed us towards, and it's a shame, because we can do so much, but then we close ourselves into certain boxes. And every time I'm like, well, why would you do that? In my view, it doesn't make sense.
I see. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll have to ponder more about that, like after the interview. But yeah, it's interesting for sure.
So far we talked about, you know, general strength as something that doesn't really exist, directions as something that is essential to set, optimization once you realize which directions you wish to take with you, or you know which journey you want to go into. And then we talked about also about this transfer as being something less valuable than training something straight, you know, like immediately on the skill. And the difficulty in doing this, because many skills are really complex, right? So this is a line of thought that I hope the people that are listening to us can vibrate with, like, you know, and this is the most important thing. This is what, you know, like at a certain point when we are talking about something, I am saying certain things and your brain is vibrating the same as mine. In order to, we know this because you're mirroring basically what I'm saying. And what we are doing here, we are trying to make other people's brain vibrate in the same frequency, so they can apply similar logics to other topics altogether, right? Yeah.
It's very interesting indeed. And it makes me think about the fact that many programs you'll find on on the web, let's say just a typical lifting program, it's actually like really designed for someone who needs to train in a certain amount of time. Because let's say they'll give you like 2 minutes of rest between sets for strength. And it makes sense if you have to do all your session in 1 hour. But if you're really about strength per se and not in the concept of a session, you might have 30 minutes of rest between sets. You might take a nap. And it's, yeah, I just found it interesting that even when we think we train strength specifically in a lift, for lifts, we actually train it in a very specific context of a session and not as lifting per se. So it adds another layer of specificity to it, which I find interesting.
Totally. Yeah, this is another good point. Like all the parameters we always talk about, they are actually set for a certain context, as you're saying. So, like for example, we know that if you distribute the volume of work throughout the week, like if you could potentially, for example, train all the time, and you could do a higher volume with the higher intensity, because you can rest more in between, so you could get much stronger. And that's what actually, like for example, Olympic athletes do. They distribute the amount of the volume of work and the intensity of work and everything throughout. If you look at, for example, the way Sheiko is programming things in powerlifting, he's doing a lot of these pyramids going from light to heavy, light, and then take a little break, and then again, like a little break, and again. And this allows people to go much further, right? So certainly these ideas of, you know, trying to make it easy and trying to create a template is just for the sake of you know, not being there with the athletes all the time. Mm-hmm. on the side of the coaches, if we are talking, you know, the sport context. Yeah, totally. And we know this is not by the way optimization, because from neuroscience we know that if you, for example, do a certain training and then you just rest 10 minutes, and then you open up your eyes again, just doing this will allow the body to, the nervous system to rewire faster, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, optimally you would do maybe half an hour, 40 minutes of training, then rest, boom, and then again. You know, just making maybe the first, let's say in this way one can make 5 trainings per day. Then you would do the first one light, the second one light, the third one heavy, and then light, medium, you know, and again. You know, and then the body would recover as it goes. Also this thing that you need to wait for many days, it was busted as a myth. Yeah, you need to wait in order to recover. You don't really need to wait, you need to recover, right? So you need to, indeed, yeah, you need to get better at, for example, sleeping, for example, resting, for example, improving your internal practice, taking care so that the body goes into, you know, boost the parasympathetic system and all the repair mechanisms, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean, we are going a little bit off track, but it's always related, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you said we don't really need to wait, we just need like to, I forgot the word, like to, yeah, recover, that's the word I was looking for, yeah. It's a nice way of saying it. I will definitely steal it, because I think it makes sense. It's very visual when you think about it, that it's not about just waiting, oh, you have to wait like 48 hours. You can wait 48 hours and still not be recovering because you eat like shit and you don't sleep at all. So it's really about quality and not quantity. And so, yeah, I think it's an interesting way of saying it.
Yeah, if you think about recovery in general, this is an interesting topic altogether, because the traditional ways in which this has been approached is wait. But waiting, of course, it will do something, but it's the least efficient way to do things ever. You know, because yeah, you just wait and things eventually will change, and hopefully that change will go into a positive adaptation for you. And fortunately, we have a certain intelligence inside the body that makes sure this goes in that direction. But with other things in your life, if you wait, it's not the best for you, right? if you just wait them out. You cannot wait out everything. And like even when you need to recover from something bad, like a fracture, then still you can do something to improve the recovery itself. You know, when I might have told you I broke the heel many years back. I broke my heel. It was a little micro fracture, but I fell when I was doing a certain solo, and yeah, it was slippery. There was some ice, and I fell from like something like 6 meters. It was really heavy. I was fine. Nothing happened to me aside from this little micro fracture, and I went to do an MRI, and the doctor was like, "Wow, you won't be able to walk anymore good enough because like there is this micro fracture, but you'll see the heel is a mess." And I told him, "Okay, wait a second, bye-bye." I went back home, and I started immediately to do cardio the way I could. Cardio, and I did internal practice, and then I started, when I felt like it was starting to heal, even just in 2-3 days, I started to apply little pressures, little stimulus, and then, you know, again, taking care of it in any possible ways. And then I was asking myself, okay, what can I do? How can I place my mind there explicitly so that I try to command that, you know, the healing happens, and then at the same time I don't leave some trails behind of this implicit pain that remains there. It's like, wow, I won't recover. Well, you know, the thing that the doctor told me, you know, and I made sure to address this, and I was fine. In 4 weeks I was running again. It's like I learned the head to toe. It was this period in which I was doing like some intense mobility and things like that. I learned the head to toe, I learned the splits, I did this, I used this time to read a lot of stuff. And yeah, and when I went back to the doctor, I told him, look, it's done. It's 5 weeks, I'm full, back on 100%. What is going on? What is going on? And he's like, well, you were really lucky. And I said, no, I'm not lucky. It's just for you to know, you know, I wasn't lucky. Of course, it's useless. He's never going to use this. And maybe even if he understands, he would still prescribe just rest to people, because people first cannot be trusted. And then second, you know, the doctors want to make sure that, you know, that you cannot sue them.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So they just give you the normal protocols. And yeah, that's not the way I operate, but I understand. But just to say that, you know, recovery is a complex factor as everything else, and it shouldn't be treated as just wait it out. Wait it out doesn't mean anything. This is something I can reach with my, you know, like a little kid can reach, you know. Tell me something of value. So I really encourage everyone to just challenge these views, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've had, in a way, similar experience. I mean, it wasn't like a microfracture or something like that, but I had like tendonitis on both my brachioradialis, and I couldn't do shit. Like everything was hurting, and I was trying everything, going to doctors, physiotherapists, etc., and went really deep into pain science and read all the things I could possibly read. And it's funny that when you dive really into it, and it seems like many doctors or physiotherapists don't do the work, it's like you see that the more you can move, the better it is. So just wait it out, like you said. It doesn't mean anything, because if you do nothing, your body will definitely adapt to it and make you better at doing nothing. So even if you do something, your body adapts to do something. And yeah, it's just when I started like to train again in a way that wasn't hurting me, which was like very low intensity and very low volume, like in frequency and like baby stuff. But just by doing that and progressively overload, that's how I got better, and not doing like what the physiotherapist told me to do. And so
I just want to clarify one thing. For all the physiotherapists out there and doctors, we know there are some great people. That for sure there are a lot of people that know their stuff and they know what they're doing. It's not a general critique. It's more just for the people around to always question a little bit when they tell you just wait it out.
Yeah.
Just to clarify this, because many times, you know, I heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, doctors, they never give you." It's not true. Like also many times I went to doctors, they gave me some great protocols and things, and I applied, and it really worked. And yeah, without all the progress of medicine and of science, of all the evidence-based work, I understand. But again, one cannot really just apply the evidence-based practice. There is also practice-based evidence, and if it starts to bring you towards a certain immobility, then you're not doing your job correctly. Right, so that's why I appreciate, for example, all the doctors that have a degree, they went through their studies, and they really know their things, and they know that maybe there are not enough evidence to support a certain protocol or another, but they also consider their experience as something valuable, and they give you advices, and they help you, and you know, they are useful to you.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. I think, I mean, it's good that you said that. I think, myself, I'm still a bit too bitter about like doctors and physiotherapists had lots of bad experiences in the past. So I'm much more focused on the negative aspects of it, like the lack of skin in the game in many ways, especially physiotherapists. And I mean, doctors as well. So yeah, I think I'm just like too bitter. I perhaps have to outgrow that phase or not, we'll see. But I still definitely have that bitterness in me.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I guess once you are gonna have also some nicer experiences, then your beliefs, or you know, in general, your opinion will change. That's it. But it's also good that you know, we bring these problems to the table, because I also had some really bad experiences. But like in any field, maybe a little bit of the problem is on us, because we should be able to have a certain understanding of who is a good head in the field or not. Because bad people working in a certain field, they're always gonna be, right? To say, for example, that there is a movement teacher X, or you know, or another, doesn't mean anything. You know, like, yeah, they're working within the field, but this doesn't say anything in terms of how good they are. You know, it's the same with anything. Like in medicine, yeah, you can have a really bad doctor and a good doctor. So if you cannot discern, then it's also a little bit of your responsibility. Now, I understand that this is tricky, because if you really don't have a degree in medicine, for example, how can you say which one is best? Well, like everything, you need to study a little bit of all, and make sure that you can at least have the basics to realize, okay, this person is maybe for me or not. Because if someone would tell me, you know, just stay still, I would never gonna go there again, you know, like.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's very important to have just the basic understanding to, like you said, to know what's perhaps like a good mindset or a bad mindset, just to, in many different areas, let's say like being able to fix your own house. Like if something goes wrong, like if there's like problems with the pipes and that kind of stuff, or with your car, with your body, that kind of stuff. And I think it's definitely useful and really important in this day and age, but still feel like bitterness in a way that this shouldn't be the case. If I go to a doctor, he should just be good, and I shouldn't be able to know anything. I should be just able to go there and, I have these problems, help me fix it, and that should be the case, you know?
Of course, so, but you're living in an utopia, my friend.
No, I mean, for sure, yeah.
That's how it is. I agree. Like, I mean, if I go to an expert in a field, be an expert, come on. You know, like, so, yeah, I agree on this point, but we need to set our boundaries. We need to make sure we have our understandings, and then we direct our path a little bit, at least to the point where we know, okay, this person might have something. But if you just go blind, no, save me, do this, it doesn't work. It's just an observation of how reality is. It doesn't work. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it goes back to what you said about strength, because you put strength in many different areas. Let's say you said that being being strong or having a strong body is also being able to deal with fear. And I think it's also the case with just having a strong character, generally speaking, because you'll have to deal with the incompetence of many people, and I'm sure many people have to deal with your own incompetence in some ways, and so you'll need to have like a strong character to deal with all that shit, because life can hit like really hard, and you'll have to be able to like just absorb that and just keep going, as Rocky would say.
Yeah, 100%. So I have a question for you. At this point, then, for example, let's say we talked about strength of character, right? So let's say someone wants to train that. How would he approach it?
Well, that's a good question, and I think you'll have to do it like specifically. So, so if you want to deal with strength of character regarding like doctors, maybe you just should like injure yourself
and go to the doctor. No, okay, it was a little bit of a joke, but really, it's more in order to highlight the framework behind all the strength work in general, and this kind of an approach, right? So, for example, you want to go into a certain field and observe what are the weaknesses that are coming out of the lack of strength of character, for example. What are the weaknesses in that field? For example, you cannot deal with certain pressures, you cannot deal with the incompetence of people, you cannot deal with this and then what I would do, I would create a certain scale, right, in order to boost one of these weaknesses, and then you would create a little plan for yourself in order to climb this ladder, right? So that eventually, whenever there's going to be the next situation in which you're diving in, your strength of character as a whole will have gone up a little. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to injure yourself and and go to the doctor and then face the frustration and then face the pressures in that scenario, but maybe that you can generalize this and create some accessory work in order to work on that. And this is the hard bit, because it requires you to go back into the white canvas and create again. But this is a place from which for example, I do innovation for myself, right? So instead of just seeing what are the protocols out there and then applying them blindly. Because this is really something that can go all across the board. It's not just about, improving, the strength, like the maximal strength output out of your deltoid, Yeah. That's easy because it's a very controlled scenario. So if I break it down, it's like, well, what does the deltoid do? Like it rises the arm. So I need to, or I don't know, it rises the arm in different directions and blah, blah, blah. It has a few possibilities. And then you would just get better in these possibilities. You just select some lifts. But when it starts to be something more complex, like, okay, how do you deal with pressure? How do you, what is the weak link? And now you create your framework, right? But this is where the goal is really, right? Yeah. Everything else is really, it's secondary. But in 2021, we need to think in this manner. We cannot stay stuck into all these traditional ways that are, this is the way you do it, right? That's how it's done. Explain to me, because I'm not a farmer from 500 years ago. Nothing against farmers, but just to say, like someone didn't study anything, or I can understand things, and once I understand, then I can work with it. Otherwise, I'll miss the motivation. I would ask myself, why do I need to do it? Convince me, right?
And I think it also all comes down to what we talked about like a couple of weeks ago when you were in Paris, about like internal practice and figuring out who you are. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. I'll just have to check the camera to be sure there's enough space and put everything on my computer.
Sure, no problem.
And so let's start again. Why did you choose your environmental practice as one of the main ways to practice life and movement? Because sure, it's a movement practice, but why did you choose it to be one of the main ways to practice life itself? I think it's quite interesting. And I know you started out with parkour like many years ago. And like I said, you may have chosen this practice by chance at first, but you keeping those roots wasn't an accident. So I was wondering if you could talk more about that.
It wasn't an accident, yes, it wasn't. Well, first of all, the nature of everything, the nature of every phenomena is that of being bound to relationships and not being substance by itself. So when we are looking at, for example, a movement practice, there is always a context out of which it comes out of, right? And in general, any practice, there is a context. And now a very interesting context is that of the environment, because the environment is always there, right? It can be your house, it can be, you know, the mountains, it can be a town, it can be the water, it can be anything, but it is what really contains us. We are in the environment. If you want to look at it through, you know, that perspective as well, we are not really separate from it. We have this ego that was useful for the sake of personal evolution, in the sense that, you know, for example, personal sustenance, not evolution. For example, I know, you know, you are different than me, then a plant is different than I am, then, you know, there are some separations between me and then the rest of the world. So I can basically take some actions in order to survive myself, right? To bring forward my being. But other than this, we are part of it, and everything comes out of it. So to take it out of your life entirely, it's something crazy. It doesn't make sense at all. Like generally, all that we are doing is some form of an environmental practice. Then it's not called like this because, again, otherwise the label starts to be useless. But everything is part of it. So in my eyes, it made sense to just widen up the definition and take more things in. So having said this, does this mean that environmental practice is something that is only, you know, you going out there, for example, reaching a certain scenario, like I don't know, a river, and swimming into it, and then learning how to swim in that scenario, in that situation? No, it doesn't mean only that. That is the focus being placed on the environment itself. But then you can also place the focus on movement or on the body. Like, for example, you want to learn how to have a better footwork, right? So you would construct, for example, a certain platform to improve the footwork, or you want to improve another attribute or whatever it is, and then you are going to create an environment. So you create the environment in order to improve on that layer. So the focus can be placed either inside of you or outside in order for you to adapt into the environment, right? So there is this back and forth going. And then secondly, aside from this, when I think of how movement is created and how motor control is created, I consider it to be an outcome of the resolution of a certain problem. And usually the problem is within a certain context, which is an environmental context. Like, for example, you have a certain affordance out there, so that can be recognized, can be perceived, and then it needs to be solved. Like, for example, I have a certain, let's put it like this, I have a certain need, and then I go into a barrier that usually doesn't allow me to hit that need, and then I need to find a certain motor solution, so an algorithm, in order to resolve that, and that will produce an adaptation in me, and that's how movement is basically created, right? So without the environment, you wouldn't have this. Of course, yeah, you can do this with another partner, for example, or you can do this with other contexts, but even when you are alone by yourself, by looking in, but eventually you are always dealing with a certain relationship. So that's why I kept it in, and I still until today I think it's one of the most valuable settings for improvement, for self-improvement, and because it does expand in all directions.
Could you be more, I don't know if precise is the word, but more concrete about it? Yeah, perhaps, yeah. Because let's say, what's the difference? That would be a nice way to put it. What's the difference between your practice and, let's say, just someone who goes out and just does, let's say, just a couple jumps or climbs up a couple walls? Like, what's the difference between those two things?
Well, first of all, the person that just goes out and does a couple of climbs and jumps, yeah, that person might not have a practice at all, you know. So it might just want to improve on certain aspects. Like for example, he just has this idea that it would be nice to do it. It would be fun to do it. When I'm doing things, I have a certain bird view in mind. Like for example, when we are talking the environmental practice, I want to become a master of myself and a master of navigation and interaction with space, with all the environment. Space is a different thing, right? So, and in order to do this, I need to approach it through many different areas. Like for example, I would go to do some practices that are inspired from climbing, some practices that are inspired from, you know, stuntman work, some practices that are inspired from the firefighters, the special forces, or even I don't know, the parkour practitioners, or you know, swimmers and blah blah blah. And I would try to keep a certain balance in between all of this. So yeah, there is a difference, of course. And then also what I do, I have a certain focus on the development of myself. So I would create the settings for that to happen. Because one of the main fundamental elements that I am after in my practice is to know myself, right? And in order to know myself, I need to place myself in so many scenarios that eventually they will reveal something I didn't know about myself. Because how can I know myself if, for example, if I don't know what would happen if I'm down underwater and I don't have any more air, you know, and I still have to swim up 2 meters. You know, what kind of a part of myself will I meet, right? What kind of a part of myself will I meet when I'm high up climbing a solo, right? What part would I meet when I am running on a rail with someone pushing me to the side that I didn't expect? Which part will come up? I don't know. I met many people inside of me, and this would have never happened if I stayed at home, or if I stayed, you know, if I just jumped between the two walls, because it would be too limited, right? So it goes down that line of thought. And yeah, certain entities that are present inside of you, you will only encounter if you go look for them. But then your perception of who you are and how many things you can discover about yourself will widen until you start to realize, wow, it's almost infinite. I can continue to go into this and discover. And this is beautiful, because also it will take you, the more you go into knowing who you are and improving all these layers on yourself, you go into a certain evolution, and it stands great meaning out of this. And in myself, in this way, I go towards, you know, like I go towards the excellence of being, which is something that was discussed for many years. You know, even back in the Greeks were talking about the arete, now excellence. And to do this it just makes sense, because it means like you have an understanding that life is unfolding and that you need to take a stance. Either you go down or you go up, right? You don't really have the option of staying where you are. And you see a lot of people degrading. How many people would you meet outside that they're dead already? It's full. They're just these zombies going to work and then coming back home and then doing this and doing that, but without a certain clarity of what do they want out of this life. And in my view, for example, I want to exploit the potentials. I want to know myself. I want to strive for excellence. You know, I want to go meet all these different entities. I want a practice that can support me and you know, that can contain all that I am. And you know, this is a huge difference than just going outside and not knowing what you're after. You're just after fun and you just jump around to walls. That is not a practice, most likely. A practice of what? You know, a practice of fun. People have a lot of different, but how can we place everything inside this practice, right? This is something I've discussed many times also with Ido, my teacher in Movement, and we discussed about this many times, and a lot of good perspectives that I took on this also come out of him for sure. And I've always appreciated people that have this view on things in terms of something not simple, not something that is, you know, just the obvious. And why do you do this? Well, it's fun. Why do you do this? Well, I'm depressed and I want to get better. Why do you do this? Well, because I want to be more healthy. Come on. If this is the real thing, if you do this just for this reason, then most likely tomorrow, when you're gonna feel a little bit off, or there's gonna be just another problem, then you're gonna need something else, and then you're gonna drop this, right? But if this contains everything, then if something happens to you, it will be contained, or you will be able to use it, right? You'll be able.
Dude, that's deep.
I mean, that's the only way I wish to operate. That the only state of mind out of which I want to conduct myself in my life.
Could you say like the last part again? I mean, I understood it, but I feel like I want to hear it again in other words about like your practice containing everything. If you could expand on that, I feel like really connected to what you just said.
Yes. So pause and play it again. No, I'm kidding. I can't repeat.
I'll do it afterwards.
It's gone. No, I'm kidding. No. So what is this about? Like when we are thinking of a practice that can contain anything, we are thinking of something that can stay with us, that we can use as a vessel for all that we are, right? So inside of this, there can be many different tastes. There should be all the different tastes of life. Like, for example, something that is really heavy, something that is really light, something that is funny, something that is healthy, something that is destroying yourself, something that... Because if you go down this path of having all these different things inside the practice, then eventually you're gonna have something that will teach you something about yourself, about life, greatly. If you just limit yourself into just one single setting or scenario, then eventually you're not gonna have a practice that can contain you, right? It's something that can support you. It's something that will continue to be there no matter what. You know, I lose the legs and I lose the arms and I'm just in bed. I still have a lot of things, you know, like if you're just after one single thing, then once that thing is gone, even from just your needs, then you are gone. Then that part of your life is completely obliterated. And this is the issue with, for example, I don't know, an Olympic athlete. You like this Olympic athlete is I don't know, is high jumping. Now he breaks an ankle. And now what does he have? Of course, he will eventually work on this and get back on track. But in this moment, in my practice, nothing would change. It would just reorganize around other things. And then when the ankle is back, I go back. But I wouldn't stop and change everything altogether, right? So this is one of the fundamental aspects that we should consider when we are thinking of having a practice, like a full, complete practice.
Yeah.
And this, by the way, it's something that can be done in many different contexts. Now, this is movement, right? These are the environmental practice, whatever it is, but it could have been done in cooking. It could have been done, you know, in many other areas. As long as you find a way to fit things in. And people with this mindset go far and eventually discover a lot of truths that are present inside.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Just like you said in the last part, it's not really about like the kind of practice you do. It's not really about the practice itself, but the mindset behind it. And like you said, like, what are you practicing? What are you looking for? And that's the thing, that's what guides everything. On a small level, you could say, like, you know, there's always the example of the power of intention. Let's say there's a difference between someone just like hitting, like just trying to hit a target, let's say with his fist, and someone really trying to go through the target he's trying to hit. There's always this power of intention, and this makes like the punch like harder in a way. That's like the basic level of intention, and it seems that what you say goes like a million times deeper into that concept, like just of the intention of your practice, and that the intention itself is actually the practice. And you could do like the same exact movements, but let's say someone could copy you and do the exact same workouts you do for the rest of his life. He might have nice skills, but he won't have what actually brings the practice to life. You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah. This is something that, you know, the shell means nothing. It's all about the substance underneath the shell, right? The form is just the form, so you can change it. And that's why many times I go out and I look at people doing what from the outside looks similar to what I do, but I know it's very different. But the people that went down this path, then they look each other in the eyes and they know. And you know, I went around the world, and many times I met a person, for example, that was a master that was playing the guitar. You know, in Germany one time I met this guy who was playing the guitar and was looking at what he was doing, the way he was approaching things, and said, okay, very similar to what I do. I met, I don't know, a certain shaman out in the woods. He was doing something similar to what I did. I met a sushi master. When I was in Japan, I was like, wow, it's the same. It's the same, it's the same. Now, it's not the same, obviously, but it's more similar. It has a lot of points in common, way more than, you know, some kids going out to do a few jumps for fun, because it also goes down the direction of a certain depth in direction. That's it. I don't want to go back into the whole spiraling of saying what it is or what it is not. Right? It takes a certain depth, and then it creates layers and levels into this, so that you know that you're going deeper, or in a certain sense you're working on yourself to a layer of evolution that cannot be bought, cannot be cannot be acquired in a day, and it's very experiential. So it's on the level of being, of who you are, you know, developing yourself, like your deeper self. It's not on the level of having. Only the level of having, in a way, can be transmitted immediately. Like, okay, let's say I have a villa in France, and I give it to you. It's like, boom. So now you're a millionaire because you have a villa, right? So immediately your level of having goes up. But if you're talking about the level of being, of who you are, I cannot pass this to you now. And that's why I also like to work with people long term, or in general to have people around me for many years, because this is like, they respond to a different logic. This responds to the logic of the bonsai. It responds to the logic of nature, of this certain cyclical rhythms that go on and on for many years in order to be acquired, and that's how you also reach good knowledge, real knowledge. It's something that stems out of your practice, out of experience, right? And yeah.
The distinction you made about having versus being is really interesting, and I think it's like a very easy and good way to conceptualize it, because you can have the splits, you can have the money or the one-arm chin. You could have them, but you might not be the person who actually has done like the process and has evolved his character in a way. And it also reminds me of something Jordan Peterson said, that one of the, I mean, I can't really say it like the way he said it, but basically the gist of it was that one of the things that could give you the most value in life is actually like building your character. And it's way more, it's way more interesting and meaningful than just having the job or something else, you know?
Yeah, no, totally, 100%. Also because it's something that nobody else can do for you.
Yeah.
I love this because we are talking about a layer that it just is. It either is or isn't. It goes, actually it doesn't go beyond words, it comes before language.
Yeah.
Right? So you can tell me all the words that you want, but then show me what you are doing, what you did, what you're gonna do, you know. This is what really matters. The level of doing is really what defines a person. Everything else might be just a construct, right? And but we get lost in these narratives. We get lost in our you know, in our discursive brains, and we lose track of where the real seed of growth is. And the real seed of growth is on being, you know, like on improving this layer. Yeah, and I like, for example, something like strength, as we were talking about before. That is exactly aligned with this. It's like, even if you take something simple like a bench press, right? I cannot give you 150 kilos of bench press. I cannot give. It doesn't matter how wealthy I am. I will never be able to give you. You know, maybe I can show you a path and then you can go there, right? But this is really what this transformative nature is what really makes us the creature we are. We shouldn't forget this, you know, and this can be brought forward and onwards, and it can be transmitted. That it really is the collective knowledge of all. On the level of having and techniques and all this is much secondary. Eventually this will all go. It will go much earlier than anything else.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I mean, you might have like the one-arm chin up now, but how will it be when you're like 85, when you don't have that one-arm chin or that double backflip or whatever? What will be left? And I think that's also something really interesting to think about. What's the legacy of it?
Totally, yeah. It's again something that should inform directions. Like, once I'm done with this, what will it have given me? Was it just something on the level of having? Then probably it was not the best bang for my buck. Yeah. Like the only thing that comes out of your job is money. Not the best. They will go, right? And that's why also in English they have the separation, like the word job and the word work.
Career. Okay.
They say work. No, because what I'm saying is you have a job, but you do work, and work doesn't necessarily mean you do it for you know, just for earning money. It's actually your vocation. It's something that you do because you love it. It's something that you do because you want to do it, etc., etc. And this in Italian we don't really have a word like this, but what really comes the closest to it is the idea of creating an opera in the sense of a piece, right? So you want to make a work of art out of your life, for example, but you don't want to make your life just a slave to your job. So that's why there is, there is this separation. It should be kept as such. You do work, you go to your job. In my view, if the work was working according to these plans, nobody should have a job and everybody should work.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Because otherwise, even if you feel like, well, this is not slavery, it is. And also this doesn't bring the human beings as a collective forward in any way. Like just people to have a job so they can earn money, so they can eat, then they can... So what? So they can come out of this situation of emergency. Yes, but how can you really evolve? Where should you go? Where should you look?
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, I think it somehow all comes down to meaning, because nothing makes sense inherently. Doesn't make sense to just go to your job. It doesn't necessarily just make sense to have a family or whatever, or just have friends, or like just buy something new or anything. Like nothing really has inherently meaning. Like we make the meaning of it. And so that's all we have. That's actually the only thing we have. And I think that in some ways, if you're not aware of it and if you don't pursue it, meaning pursuing meaning, because if you don't, well, then you don't have it. And then you actually become, like you said, like a zombie, or you're not really alive because you're not pursuing meaning. And that's what matters, because nothing else does, in a way.
Totally. And then again, one should go back into, for example, one would say, I want to train strength, I want to do this, I want to run a marathon. Like, are you sure? What do you really want? So one should step down of that pedestal that created for himself and go back into the hardware mode and start over, start again. And look into its own practical philosophy. What is important? What is important for myself? What gives me meaning? What do I want? Etc. etc. And then one would distill all of these ideas into a manifesto, and then that manifesto will change over the years, but at least it became explicit now, right? And then from that layer you can operate, and you can align yourself to what matters to you. Agree. If you just do things without meaning, at a certain point, something will come knock at your door. Someone or something, like it will be, maybe it will come knocking a few hours before death, but it will come. It's like, you wasted your life. And, I don't want this creature to come knocking at my door. I wish to greet him or greet it many times inside inside my living room. Like, welcome, okay, let's talk. So that, like, you stay with me all the time. It's not a nice creature to have around.
Yeah.
Right? But it is what it is. I like to invite it in and to just allow it to stay. Because it informs me. I would pick this one 1,000,000 times in exchange for just some naivety. You can live in naivety, but eventually you will wake up like everyone else at a certain point, right? And to me, okay, is this hard? Is this tough to deal with? Yes, it is. But it is what it is, so I deal with it now. I don't wait.
Yeah, true. And it makes me think about Nietzsche, generally speaking. One of the famous things he said was in the lines of, God is dead and we've killed him. And it's just the fact that what he meant, I think, by saying that God is dead is that there's like no traditional values anymore. And what religion gave us back in the day is actually meaning. And now we are destructing many things about this meaning, and we just don't take it from someone else, and we actually have to create it ourselves, which is really, really tough. And you know, like, I'm a big fan of memes, like on Instagram or anyways, I really like memes. And one thing I noticed about memes is that there are so many memes regarding, it doesn't matter what kind of meme account, like every meme account has a lot of depressive memes actually. And when you look at the likes, like some like depressive memes have like 400,000 likes on it. And you know, a lot of people, so memes are mostly watched like by young peoples, and many say, oh yeah, millennials don't want to work anymore, like they're lazy and all that stuff. But this is an interesting time because 50 years ago there was a lot of more intrinsic meaning to everything, because people told you what's meaningful. You just go to your fucking job and you do that a lot because you have to provide for your fucking family. Let's say if you're a man, or if you're a woman, you have to be there for your family. You do all that stuff that's necessary to it. You get married, then you get kids and all that stuff. But once all that broke down, it left a big hole, and now we have to fill it. And I think exactly, yeah, exactly. And it's like the first time I got introduced to it was in high school when I watched Fight Club for the first time. And Tyler, one of the characters in the movie and in the book, said, we don't have a great war. We don't have a great depression. Our depression is our lives. And it was very interesting. It's like, oh yeah, I felt really connected to it. There's a lack of meaning and I had to find it. And I think this is all about, like, this is the fight of our lives. Like you said, this is why we practice, because this is it. There's not something else than meaning itself.
Yeah, totally, yes. We are exactly in this situation you're describing. And the point is that, yes, we can go pick the minds of those who really went into these topics and they picked the things, but we don't trust them anymore as we did in the past, because you know, like the general education went higher and higher. So I don't trust anyone. I want to discover these things for myself. And yeah, and once you realize this, then you start to you know, dig deeper and deeper and find experiential situations that can teach you things. And that can allow you to understand what you're really after, etc. And that's why, as I said, that's why we practice. That's why we are building something of like this that is very, very updated and unfolding and contemporary, you know. And that is not just something that is now old, and it's not. Yeah, it's not. It just cannot fit the shape of the present. If this is the present, we need something like this to make it fit, right? If this is the present and I have this, it doesn't go. It's just the wrong tool. And we need to update, and that's what we're doing. We are updating each other. And that's why a lot of people don't really, maybe, you know, as you said, the millennials don't want to work, and well, maybe they don't want to have a job. Maybe they want to work.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And then you're right that when you're talking about the memes, many times I also look at them as like, wow, it's so much truth. It's like in this little thing, and without any, you know, also sometimes it's the cruel truth. It's like being shot in your face, like as you're reading through, it's like, wow, correct. What can you say? If you're honest about it, you just say, okay, that's correct, that's true. Move on.
Yeah.
This makes me curious about yourself and your personality, and what gives you meaning in life. Why are you alive in the first place, except for the fact that you were born, and so just mathematically, but more philosophically. And yeah, so what gives you meaning? Why are you here? And what makes you struggle?
Well, in a way, we talked about this a few moments ago when I was talking about the practice itself. But in general, to me, what really gives me meaning is to have a purpose, like a certain goal in my mind that I need to reach. And this goal doesn't have to be something quantitative alone. It can be widespreading and going in many different directions. But this goal allows me to stay, you know, on the journey, right? And reaching the goal doesn't really mean anything. It's just for the sake of having a direction. Like, and very, very broadly, what I wish to have is to being immersed constantly into, let's say, a highway that allows me to evolve, right? To evolve and to know myself. These are the two things that I'm after the most. Now, how do I do this? This is the hard part, and this is where the practice comes in, right? Struggles will be in reaching those, like the direction of these goals. Now, what it is usually considered as something relevant for the sake of the creation of meaning is this: is like you have a certain thing you want to reach, then you are going towards it, and then once you reach it, you have your meaning. But the reality of life is not this, because once you reach it, actually meaning disappears, because meaning was coming out of the fact that you were on the journey, right? So what you need to make sure is that before you reach your goal, then you have already set another one, right? So that you, instead of thinking of your life as in a Euclidean space, but you have all these different goals here and there, you think of your life in a topographical geography, so that you are in somewhat of a map, and then because you can only traverse at one thing at a time, right? And then that once you have reached a certain point inside the map, you already know the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, so that eventually this will allow meaning to bubble out of what you're doing, and to know that you are in a good direction. Because I can only know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do if I have set for myself a certain amount of standards and set a certain amount of parameters that would tell me if I am on the right path or not. So what creates meaning for me? Yes, this: to know myself better and better, to be able to discover, to dive into, to exploit all the potentials inside of me and inside of the world. And this is basically, and going into evolution, this is something that comes, in my view, it comes out of a very early realization. It's like, take me and put me in a dark room. Everything inside of me will start to explode, to go crazy, because I will want to, you know, use all that I can, right? And if I don't do it, then I'm missing something. And then if I do it and I even allow all of this to progress and to move forward, then it's even better and better, you know, like, so that's why, again, I would want to go towards the direction of excellence. Now, yeah, what makes me struggle is this: it's that when you are on your way there are a lot of obstacles, because every time you've reached a certain goal and you're going into the next, you're going back into, you know, uncharted territory. You're going back into, you know, the realm of darkness, the realm of something that you don't know, it's unsure. So for example, in a few days I will move to Vienna. What is it gonna be there for me? I don't know. It's gonna be a great struggle, probably, most likely, but is this exactly what I need to do in order to progress? Yes, so I have no options. If I want to align to my dharma, in a way, to my flux, you know, to what's correct for me, having set the direction that I have set from a stable place, not from like being bombarded by all emotions, but having asked myself, what do I really want to do? Then this is the right thing. And whether there is a struggle, there isn't a struggle, there is this, there is this, I do it. I do it because there is no one really that can do this for me. And in the beginning, because you cannot do it, it's correct to also have a person that can help you, a teacher or whoever it is that can take in his hands, you know, like your decisions, so that, you know, because you are, most people, maybe not you, but most people are going in the direction of just comfort, you know, that what feels good, that's what I should do. Maybe not. If you're after, for example, personal evolution, certainly not, because comfort is exactly where nothing happens. You know, and I also know you went yourself through a great transformation, and, you know, choosing to go, you know, to Paris and to move out and to, you know, being immersed in something that was tough. Like, you know, why did you do it? You know, why didn't you just stay in a simple situation? You know, and this is, I take it on myself all the time. It doesn't matter how hard, but if it's correct, I do it. And then, by the way, every time I did this, I came up into a higher state of being again and again and again. And also you realize this is how life goes. This is a good life. That's how a good life is lived. And while I do this, I also start to enjoy them more and more every moment. Because yes, so if the goal is not important, then logically, what is it important? It's all the, you know, the tension towards that goal. So every single moment that we have, and it might sound like a cliche, but nowadays, but it is really what we have, you know, like now having this conversation is the best moment of my life, right? And then most likely once we finish the conversation, I will have again the best day of my life. Because in this way, if it ends tomorrow, I lived exactly the way I wanted to live. What else would I want? To want something else, to want a certain stability that will always be there with you, you know, a good job, you know, a house, comfort. Where is this taking you on in 20 years? You know, when everything will be taken away from you, what will be left? You know, in my view, that cannot guide your choices. It's very naive. It's a kid's dream. And many times it's really tough for people to hear this. It was tough for me to understand as I went through. But if you don't have a low IQ, you realize at a certain point, wow, it's not a simple life.
Indeed, yeah, life is hard, and in many ways, like, life is suffering, which makes meaning much more important because you have to go through it. And I get what you're saying, but I also expected you to talk more about, let's say, periods of lack of meaning, struggles with staying on the path, discipline, energy management, authenticity, all that stuff. I don't know if it rings a bell to you, and if you could talk also about that.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of different themes. Well, first of all, okay, so let's go one after the other. First of all, situations in which I didn't have meaning and was struggling with this, for sure. It's but this was more pertaining in my adolescence, like many years ago, more than a decade of years ago. Now I'll turn 13 in October, so yeah, long time ago. And I remember at a certain point I was asking myself, okay, so what are we after? What am I after? What is it this for? Of course, like everyone went into. And then I started to realize these things I'm talking to you now. You know, I had certain realizations back then. You know, like, well, I need to be going somewhere. You know, it was very unrefined and raw, but I felt like, okay, what really gives me meaning is, for example, to get better. You know, like back in the days, I didn't have, of course, these insights, but I would say to myself, okay, it's to get better. It's something. It's like doing something directly myself with my hands. You know, like immersed. And that's why I started to train acrobatics, to train parkour, and just immerse and go in, without asking myself too many questions, in the sense of, okay, is this the correct thing to do? So I paralyze myself. Well, I go in, I go in. And then in between, I realized also it's something that I couldn't answer for myself alone. So I started to read a lot of books and to listen to a lot of podcasts, and start to make sense. And then that's when I discovered Zen, and that's when I discovered Buddhism in general, when I went into reading what certain practices were about, like yoga and so forth. And then, slowly, I gained more pieces of the puzzle, and it started to, more things started to connect one another. So, yeah, in terms of my search for meaning. And then now, from the point where I'm now, things are starting to get a little bit more clear. And it was a process, and I'm sure that if we had this conversation 10 years from now, I would tell you, no, Marcello, when he was 30, wasn't understanding nothing. So I'm not claiming I do understand everything, but I just went a little step further. It's just a little bit more clear what I'm after. At least the clearest it can be now, because I'm doing all I can in order to fulfill these definitions for me. Now, I had some dark moments in terms of personal practice, for sure.
Could you give like personal examples? To
Yes. So, for example, one of the worst probably was when I realized, for example, parkour, which is something that I dedicated my life, like myself, totally and completely for, over a decade of years back in that time. Couldn't contain all that I am, and so that I had to move on and create something larger and study and go back into the drawing board. And this was really tough for me, because at a certain point, and from this stand a certain other realization, which is I am not the labels that I attach to myself, right? So I'm not parkour. But it was really tough, because I had to become parkour. At a certain point, I was that. I was it. I was 100%. I helped, bringing it to Italy, and I was around teaching everywhere, and international workshops and things like this. So I was parkour. And then to say I am not parkour anymore, it was tough. But in the same way as I'm not, I did a degree, but I'm not an academic. It was tough to say to myself, I'm not this, and I'm not that, and I'm not that. And then this allowed me to grow into a different form. It's like, okay, so now if I take everything away from me, and I take away all these labels, what remains? What does remain? And this helped me define the self, helped me define my identity. And now there is something inside of me that you can change. It's like, I never say, for example, I'm a movement teacher, I'm this and that, unless it's useful for, clarifying for the people around. But I don't say who I am, what I'm Marcello, that's it. And I'm evolving and reshaping and transforming. And if you meet me in 15 years from now, I will be a different person. But this came out of these struggles. The struggle for identity was the highest, the biggest. Then, of course, I have a lot of, and this is one thing that a lot of people are going to hit their head on, and I would urge them to think, who are you? Like, just leave it as a koan inside the head, resonating. Like, who am I? Am I really a musician? Am I this, am I that, or is there something else that continues onwards and evolves?
Yeah.
Right. And other than this, I had a lot of different little struggles like everyone else. I did first. I started some other uni. I started to study pharmacy, like pharmacology, and then I decided to change it, and I went to sports science, and then I had some economical struggles as I was growing up, because I was traveling everywhere, and it was starting to be heavy, and like everybody have their struggles, but I'm very clear in my brain where I did the leaps, and this is one big that it more pertains to me, because everything else is the struggles that everyone else have, but the insights that come out of this usually are nothing that relevant. It's like, oh well, I had an emergency in the money that I didn't have, like, no, like I can't get at the end of the month, and now I solved it, I have a better job. Okay, cool. What did you learn from it? Nothing. So that is a useless struggle, you know.
Yeah.
And this would place also things into different terms of priorities, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like you said, it's not about the practice, but the meaning behind it. Same thing with struggles. Like, struggles don't mean shit. Same thing with practice. It's just about, like, everything, the meaning behind it.
Exactly. Now, I try to now fabricate for myself the right struggles. And the struggles that come to me in my life, I just navigate through and I resolve them as minor things. Even if from the outside they look huge, for me, minor things, because I know they will always be there. You know, they will always be there. I was chatting with people recently. They're like, did you find a house for Vienna for this and that? And how are the practicalities? Like, no. It's like, are you crazy? What is, come on. It's minor things. Who cares? I'm working on the curriculum because I'll open a school there. No? So I'm working on the curriculum of the school. I'm working on, you know, the development of people. I'm working on my development, my evolution. Come on. That's what matters. The finding a house, you know, like making sure I know everything, all the surroundings, the right supermarket and right this and that. How long does this really need my attention? I will solve it, yeah. Of course, I will solve it at a certain point. But this cannot be an important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, we are always like, life throws at us these emergencies, and we need to react. And it's like, wow, now the priorities are this, and then it's this. It's not that if I get, you know, if I lose an arm, that becomes a priority. I will not allow. Of course, if I reach a certain a good enough stage in my mind, in my mindset and in my willpower, etc., I would be able to push it aside and not react to this and just be, well, how can I continue to live my life with the priorities I've set from a stable place?
Yeah, because it was never about that arm in the first place.
Yes.
It was about something else.
Exactly. But people constantly, now, for example, let's say you have an economical struggle, so everything will be like, wow, I need to change my life now. All my hours in the day is to find money. Is like, look, no, it's the wrong place to come from, even like in terms of strategy. Imagine, like you are in a war, you lose a battle, you change strategy, you change again and again. Why? If it was a correct strategy, don't change it.
Yeah.
No, like that's why many, you know, there's a saying, you lose battles but you win the war. What does it mean? It hints to the fact that if a strategy is good, it's good. That's it. For example, no?
Yeah.
And I don't remember anymore what other elements you wanted me to touch.
I mean, I wasn't interested in specific elements. I mean, I talked about discipline, all that stuff, but it was just like, generally speaking, it was just to get more personal insights about you and, yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, that's the way I view struggle in my life, the way I use it, and the way other people, I would suggest them to look into what they do and how to use for them. Because if we don't have this certain understanding, then we are just reacting through life.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we are just machines then.
Yeah.
We're not humans.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's very difficult to, because you can't always be in chaos. At some point you also have to have a certain amount of order, of things going right and being stable, because otherwise you'll just go crazy. And I think that balancing this act of order and chaos is difficult, especially when you try to find your own way. Because what you said about parkour, I felt like connected to it. Because at first, before I even knew about movement, or before I even started like studying exercise science as well at university, before all that, I was interested in personal development, which is like an easy way to say I'm not really connected to personal development right now per se, but it's just like an easy way to conceptualize it. And at some point, because this was really my passion, and at some point, after spending a lot of time in this community and working on it, I wasn't feeling connected to it anymore. And I wasn't a personal development guy. It felt like there was like a distance between me and the other people. And some other things I'm really into. I really like animals. And so that's one of the reasons I'm vegan. But even saying that I'm vegan doesn't feel right, because I don't really feel connected in many ways to other vegans, because to me there's something else to it that we probably don't share. Even if I do movement, I'm really interested in movement and obviously dedicate lots of hours practicing it. But in many ways I don't feel like a mover. So I do movement, but I don't consider myself like a mover per se, you know what I mean? I really like climbing, but I'm not really a climber. So it's very difficult to find your own way, because man, being in a box feels fucking good, you know? I'd like it in many ways, just, oh yeah, to be a climber and just have this, but it seems like life and personality is so much more complex than that, and I think trying to find your own way is quite difficult.
It is, and that's why maybe in the beginning one shouldn't start there. Like maybe one should explore a lot of different ways, a lot of different boxes, a lot of different, again, and then discover much more about oneself, and then to then realize eventually, okay, I need something that is this and not that, and that and not this, blah blah blah, no? And yeah, and that's why also, you know, in the beginning, if you don't have a teacher at all, it becomes difficult, very difficult, and most likely you can get lost if you have these understandings too early. It's also problematic, because you still need the practical material on which to work on. So these boxings, yeah, you need them, but you don't belong to them, right? It's like a tool.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a tool. You need I don't know, you needed a certain tool to climb the mountain, then you get to the top, and then you discard it, and then you move on. And now what's the next thing? The next thing is, now you need a boat to go across a river, then you use the boat, and then you discard it, and then you need, I don't know, a certain tool to make the fire, and then you use it, and then you discard it, and you continue like this. But if you continue carrying all your tools, that is like, I become this creature, like this abominio. Mm-hmm. It's like it's going around with all these things on your back, and then just drop them and get lighter, because they were just things that were helping you on the way. No? And, yeah. Yeah, but again, there should be someone that is telling you, go there, but then take it away. Go there, then take it away, because we tend to cling to things, to cling.
Oh, for sure.
Right, so like I that's what I was doing. Like, I'm a parkour practitioner, good, boom, that's it, and then I'm this, and then I'm this, and then I'm this, and I become all this construct, and then at a certain point is like, but who is carrying this? Do I really still need all of this? No, poof, okay, drop it. You'll be lighter, but there is something still that you know, remains. Yeah. What remains? You know, when they take, out, like they take all the clothes off of you, all your material possessions, everything. What remains, that is what should be cultivated. You know, but they take out of you even all your titles, all the things that you gained, you know, like everything. Yeah, what remains? And I always ask myself, and I think, am I still going in that direction? If not, if I'm going back into the level of labeling, well, wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you have to use the label without letting the label use yourself. And yeah, like you said, it's just a tool. And I think it also comes down to when I sent you the questions, the topics that I wanted to talk about, you said, oh, we could also talk about like authenticity and trends in movement. And I think in many ways people talk about movement like this thing that breaks many boxes and all that stuff. But in many ways it's still a box. And like you said in the mail, in many ways it's also just like a trend. And when you just type like movement or movement culture or whatever on Instagram, you'll see a shitload of people just practicing the same old shit. They'll basically have just the same practice. It's just about the movements and not about the practice. And it seems like everyone's just doing the same thing, and like they're living the practice like of someone else and not living their own practice and having their own ways. And in many ways it just became, in many ways I think it just became like just like traditional fitness. So you're just doing these movements, but there's nothing behind it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, this is a huge topic. I just wanted to talk about it very briefly, because what I see nowadays out there is people just jumping on a trend, right? As you're saying, they're jumping on this trend and they're taking all the forms and discarding all the substance, and you know, just simply doing some hard skills. And of everything that we talked about today, there is absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And how do you solve this problem? Well, first of all, you should ask yourself, what are the roots of what I'm doing? This is something that I always ask myself, is like, what do I want to study? For example, I don't know, let's say yoga. Do you want to study yoga? Okay, cool. Who is your teacher? What's the lineage? What's the lineage? You don't have a lineage, so do you think you are a genius? Because you might be. So that you can go through, you know, all the, you can potentially just follow a certain logic, and if you have a fast enough brain and a deep enough brain, eventually you're super intelligent, you can go through everything that was described by Patanjali by yourself. You just rediscover everything. But would you say that someone can go from zero math, like so from starting from scratch, and reach Einstein's conclusions in a lifetime? What do you think? Can it be done? Do you think?
For some people, for sure, but not me.
No, I don't think I don't think this is something possible.
I mean, if you're Einstein yourself, if you're like him, then it definitely might be possible if you're a genius as well.
If you're a genius, but then you need to have the mind of such a mind of a genius that you would create all the collective knowledge until that point, and then move onwards into new innovation. It's really something difficult. Now, even if you would feel in that percentile, wouldn't it be easier to just, you know, find a lineage, study, deepen your understanding, get guidance, and then at a certain point continue onwards on yourself if you would wish to do so, but now from a different state of mind, from a different set point. Yes, in my view, this makes total sense. Like, but most likely those people who don't have the authenticity also don't realize this, the importance of this, right? And yeah, in the end, it all comes down to being something very, very empty. And I'm not interested in this. Like when I look at what some of these people are doing, I look and, well, I had better off, you know, just go drink a good coffee with a friend and have a deep conversation rather than, you know, go out and do something completely empty.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I might be wrong on that, but that's just like a perspective I have. I think like every practice has its inherent problems. And I think that one problem with having a movement practice, so let's say a generalist practice, is by sometimes when you take things from different sports, while stripping it away from the sport, you actually stripping it away from its meaning as well. Because you could do hanging all you want, you could do like brachiating all you want, but let's say things that people took away from climbing, but sometimes while doing that, you also took the meaning away. And there's a reason why it was used in climbing, and just doing brachiating without, let's just say, doing climbing might be a problem, because while being too generalist, you'll miss out. You'll miss out on the community and what it's like to be a climber and what it's like to actually use those skills.
Yeah, that's why it's important. Yeah, it's a really good point, because, for example, if you choose to take the form from somewhere else, then you need to inject new substance. I agree. So, and that's where really people fall in the pit. It's like, okay, so you took this from there, okay, now how do you put it back together? What's the philosophy? What's the soul? You know, what's behind it? If you are able to create something behind it once again, then you're gonna have something new. And this something doesn't have to be functionality of any kind. Let's be clear. It can be anything, but you should be able to know what you're doing. Okay? Yeah, is it something that you can connect to? Like it makes sense?
Yeah.
And yes, and when I look at other people's practices or attempts to create these new practices, most likely they come from, yeah, maybe just a place of ego. Like, for example, I want to, I'm not gonna say the name because of course I don't want to give any, I don't want to make a commercial for this horrendous thing that I've seen, but there is the guy that is doing somewhat of a fitness movement thing, and I saw this and it was clearly built for marketing, okay? And is it a good place to come from? No. So if I have the right glasses to look into the world too, I would never pick something like this to study. But many people, because they don't ask themselves what's behind it, where does it come from, they just fall in the pit. And it's like they give the money, they support something that is actually taking away people from a real evolution. And then they think, well, actually, I've experienced already all this world, so it's not for me, maybe I move on. No, come on. Isn't it obvious that you just had a bad experience? It's not like this. And it's the same that what happened to you. Like, for example, you're saying all the doctors I went to, like the physiotherapist, but then I tell you, wait to say that this is the case for everyone. Because they in a way killed the idea that you had on these people, but it doesn't mean that there aren't some great people around, you know, like some great experts. Sure. But in movement, this happens all the time. And yeah, the question that one should ask himself is like, where does it come from? What are the roots? What is the lineage? Why was this created in the first place? Was it because there wasn't something, there was a need for innovation, or was it because people just wanted to earn on it? Was it created from a place of ego? Third is like, is the person that is developing this doing it himself or herself, you know? And then that, you know, overall, does it convince me? Like, even from a position of feeling, is like, is it going to allow me to discover a lot of things about myself, or is it something very limited? And I would go down this path of logic, and then once you have addressed all this, then you will have your answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think this is a nice way to actually end it on a good note, unless you have certain things you'd like to express before we stop it here, topics you'd like to address.
Well, just one little quick thing regarding setting priorities, because we talked about it before, but then we didn't continue onwards, and it's just a little exercise that people can do. I think it might be useful. It's just this, because it will organize a lot of the things that we talked about, you know, so that they have also a practical protocol. So look into what you say to the outside world are your priorities. Like, so this will be your explicit priorities. Try to write them down. For example, in terms of the practice, what do I want to do? How do I want to allocate my time in my day, etc., etc. What is important for me, etc. Now, try to look at your day, observe it, and try to split it down into hours and see how many hours are you allocating for what, and then make a match. Try to see. Usually there is a huge wow, aha moment. Like, for example, someone would say, my kid is the most important thing for me. Then you look in your day and it's half an hour. Like, is it the most important thing? No. Okay, so what is it? Then you look, it's your job, for example. It's like, okay, good. So you shouldn't say things that are wrong. Or you should align. Otherwise, you'll be lying to yourself, to the rest of the world, and then this creates a lot of dissonance. Yeah, and a lot of friction. So yeah, it's just this. So for example, you would say, I'm a movement practitioner. So what variety of movement do you practice? Then have a look, write it down, and then make the match. Okay, so this is a little tool that I always use for myself in order to create some word view. Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Yes, no. Okay, direct me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I've heard similar things in the past and done that kind of work, but just the fact that you talked about it made me think myself about what I do, and there's definitely some discrepancies in what I say and what I do. And yeah, I think there's... What's that? Yeah. And one of the things I talked a couple times on my channel, which is actually really important to me, is just the concept of truth and telling the truth. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's so I have this thing. I've written, be precise in your speech, and then I've written, friends, what are you really feeling? Like, what's really inside? And so I've written it in my living room, which is where I spend most of my time when I'm inside. And yeah, that's something like really important to me. And yeah, be precise in your speech, what's truthful. Or like Jordan Peterson would say, at least don't lie, because who the fuck are you to know the truth? But at least you know when you lie. And what you said definitely falls in that category, to just be honest with yourself and have a bit of that tough love.
Yeah, it's great. Yes, totally. Also, because if you do this, what you just did, it's an awareness practice. It's like you put it there, so you make sure that, you know, like the horrible things don't grow in your room, because certain phenomena can only occur in the dark. So if you shut the light, you open the windows, it cannot happen anymore. Right? So just looking at it, it changes it. And it's something that we want to bring more and more awareness into our everyday living.
Yeah, totally agree.
Just a second, I have to put my charger again in my PC because it fell down when I was up. All right, done. So it was a really interesting conversation. I'll definitely watch the interview myself again and think about it.
Yeah, see if there is something that you can cut off or whatever it is and make it very palatable. One thing I forgot, you closed it down already?
I'm still filming.
You're still No, yeah. I thought about Vienna, maybe just saying a couple of things. I'll be there, and if people want to come.
Oh yeah, we were going to talk about it. It was just like my finishing speech before we actually...
No, it just popped in my brain now.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool. But yeah, no, it was really nice talk. Oh, wow, it's 2 hours? Wow.
Yeah.
Where did it go?
It was fast, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Jerome talks about it when you do like a podcast. It's like a time machine. You just talk, then you just went like a lot of in the future. It's like, oh shit, so much time passed away. It's cool. And before we talk about how people can join you, and before you talk about your work, I think it might be nice for people to hear what I actually think about what you're doing, what it's brought to me. So one of the things that it's important for me, that actually gives me meaning in life, is to feel stronger with my body, just feel stronger with myself, generally speaking. That's something that's really important to me. That's also why I asked the first question was about strength, because it's something I really feel connected to. And what I like about your practice is, and the way you teach, is not only is it something that makes me confront my weaknesses, and if you don't confront your weaknesses, you don't get strong, and so that's something really nice. And let's say, why did I come to you and not just do some parkour, you know, is that I think that what you gave has much more deepness to it, and that's what I'm looking for as well. I think like many practice can be like really superficial in a way. I mean, in many ways, you make it then superficial or deep yourself with the meaning you put into it, but just inherently, there's much more deepness and processes into it, and just the way you program and all the different layers there's to it. I think it's really thoughtful, you know, because oftentimes you'll see like some stupid tutorials on YouTube, and it's just like some random exercises. Of course, it might be a way to get into the practice, but there's no thought into it. Those are just exercises. There's no fucking process behind it. And I think that's what's really interesting with what you do. And of course, you have a lot of experience. Not only are you practicing a lot, but you're also a geek, which is two good things to have, like to do the research and to actually have skin in the game. So that's something that's really valuable, and just the amount of content you give, just the many pages there is to it is something you don't get with a lot of coaches for sure. And also the reason I went to have this environment movement practice and just like the movement layer to it, why I decided to go with you, let's say with someone like, let's say Ido, or even though it's in the same price range, is that we also have like a relationship to you, which also brings a lot of value to the practice itself. And I think that's something that I find like very valuable. And so yeah, I definitely encourage people to, if they feel attracted to it, to think about it and to actually work with you, because I think it adds a lot of value. So that's what I wanted to say. And now you can feel free to talk about what you do and how people can join you and your school in Vienna and all that stuff.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, in general, what I do, first of all, I appreciate that you understand what I'm doing and that you can look into the complexity of the matter and where do I want to take people, which is eventually a journey to know themselves, and through certain frameworks of practice, because there is nothing else really. But then as we are going through all of this, we need to discuss and we need to make sure that it is clear where we are going and what we are doing and why we are doing what we're doing and why we are making certain choices other than others. And etc. Now, especially all the environmental movement practice is a big part of my research, but I'm not gonna stop there. Now I keep developing and innovating the field as much as I can. As you notice, as there is a lot of like going deep into the internal work and into the body and so forth, and to eventually meet all the entities that are inside of us, and you know, discover more and go into a long-term path of evolution. Now, yeah, so if people wish to get some guidance from me, they can contact me on info@marcellopalozzo.com. My email.
The link in the description, so
Thank
they can
you.
access
Yes.
it easily.
Thank you. Then they can have a look at Instagram. They can have a look at my website, marcellopalozzo.com, and again, maybe you can put a link there and have a look at few of the things that I'm writing. And yeah, guys, if I really need to tell you what it is, I can only tell you what it is today, and you heard it in the conversation, but eventually, you know, I cannot tell you what it's gonna be, because it's an unfolding process. But it's unfolding, it's coming with me, it's coming with you, Clement, it's coming with everyone that is on the boat. And then when you jump off the boat, you will only know what has been created until that moment. But if you stay on the boat, you will get, you know, all the development that is coming with it. Now, yeah, you can study with me online, and this is one option. You can come to some events when I'm gonna do events, and then the way in which I would prefer to teach is the live in presence teaching. But this would mean that you would have to move to Vienna, where I'm opening my school, and I'm gonna teach there 4 times a week on bringing forward the group of work, and it is going to be from Monday to Thursday, and then allowing for some space of development during the weekend for events, for certain adventures, explorations, things we're gonna do together as a group for those who will be there. Now, I don't accept just drop-ins, so if you wish to come there just sometimes, then you can study with me online and then come. Otherwise, consider moving, like few people are doing, as I did many times on myself when I went to study with someone. I just dropped everything and went to study, and that's something that maybe for someone feels impossible, but you know, if you're really looking for something valid, I think you in this topic of self-development, there you're gonna find it, because all the people that you're going to find in the group are going to be really serious people.